Hello and welcome to the Nursing Mother's Room. On today's episode, I have my friend Katie here joining us. She is a mom doula, and we're going to talk about all things from birth, postpartum, and even all of the lactation and breastfeeding questions that people may have. So I am very excited for her to join us. Katie, what inspired you to become a doula?
So it came out of my birth experiences. My
Mhm.
first birth I had was was not what I had dreamed it to be. Um, I had placenta previa, so I don't know if you know what that is, but basically the placenta is covering. I've got my daughter here. It's covering the cervix, like so it's completely covering the birth canal, and that's not ideal because if there's a break in the placenta when it's delivered, you hemorrhage, and hemorrhage is bleeding. And if you don't want to lose a lot of blood. It can be fatal for the mom and it can be fatal for the baby because the placenta is the oxygen source for the baby inside of the womb. So if you cut that oxygen source off during delivery, it can be fatal for the baby. So I had a C-section with my first, and I found out I had to have a C-section right when I was like, I don't know, right away, 8, 9, 12 weeks along. I started having some bleeding, and it was scary because I didn't know what was happening. And from then, the doctors are telling me I had to have a C-section while I was dreaming of having a home birth or like a very, very natural birth experience because that's what I had always envisioned myself to have. And so my dreams were just shattered with that. And I remember just every doctor appointment leaving crying and just feeling so confused like, why is this happening to me? Like, what did I do wrong? Nothing. I didn't do anything wrong. My baby didn't do anything wrong. No one did anything wrong. It's just the way that the placenta was laying inside of my body. And so I wish I had a doula for that whole experience because I would have had a lot more reassurance. And what doulas can do today is so much more than they can do even 10 years ago. My second baby, I had a VBAC, which is vaginal birth after cesarean, and that was very successful. I had an epidural, and but labor was still like very, very, very difficult leading up to hospital birth. And I'm so glad I had a successful hospital birth. But years and years and years go by later, and I'm still replaying all of this in my head. Like my births didn't go the way I wanted. And it's interesting. Women who are like in their late age and when they're elderly, they can start to have dementia or have issues. They'll forget their daughters and sons' names, but they won't forget their births. And so that is how powerful, sorry, that is how powerful birth is for women. We are literally designed to have babies. And when something doesn't go the right way, like it stays with us. I became a doula because partially for my own healing of trying to understand what went wrong and just work on the inner side of me. And another reason why I became a doula was because not everybody operates this way in the Christian world, but it was prophesied over me that I would be administering to women and babies. And so that stayed with me that was spoken over me when I was, I think, I don't know, 19 years old or so. So that's always been something that's been playing in the back of my mind too. And I'm like, I don't know what testimony I have. I don't know what I have to offer because I'm 19. At the time. But fast forward, now I have 3 children. Now I'm a doula. God's put me in this city in Battle Creek, and there's such a huge need for moms to get educated and moms to just see that there's options and to know that you're not alone and you can be supported if you have to have a C-section or you want to have a vaginal birth after cesarean or you want to have an unmedicated birth or you want to have a home birth in your living room. there's there's so many options and there's so much to the birth world that is it needs to be talked about, and postpartum especially too, because after it's everything leads up to the birth, but um, we need to be the village again. We need women to be the village again, and I love that you're doing this podcast because this is modern day village. Moms can listen to a podcast while they're unloading the dishwasher or folding their laundry. They can put it on the TV or put it on their phone, put it on their iPad, and we can share our stories together. We can encourage each other and listen to each other. We're meant to be social like that. We're wired that way to learn from each other and share wisdom. And that's something that's been lost over a few generations. Oh, okay. I got to put on these glasses for her.
Yeah, I think yeah, just touching back on what you were saying about like even just kind of feeling like your body's like failing you, you know. I think a lot of women go through that because birth and delivery or just your pregnancy in general doesn't look like the movies. It doesn't look like how people talk about it to be. And I think it's so sad still that there's so much stigma around different types of birth. And there's been a huge topic of conversation lately that I've been hearing from a lot of different women that they've been getting told that, you know, you had a C-section, you took the easy route, you didn't really give birth, you didn't all these things. And the crazy thing is that like even when I was going into labor and having my son and he was born early, I my biggest fear was having a C-section. And for me, it was just this thought of like, I don't want to have to go through surgery. I don't want to have to do all these things and stuff. But I knew that if it came down to it and we needed to get my baby out that way, I wasn't going to fight it, you know? And I think that sometimes there's just more of this like social stigma
Yeah.
towards it that causes women to have like this fear of it versus like, hey, like, you know, if we need to get it done, or even sometimes women just like select to get, you know, have a C-section and they're like, I'm just, you know, this will be easier on me having the expectation of knowing all these different things. I think regardless, I'm like, as long as your baby comes out and your baby comes out healthy and you're good, like, you know what I mean? Like it shouldn't, you know, it shouldn't really matter of these things. And I even remember my mom saying growing up because she had all three of us C-section. She had me C-section because she had gone past 40 weeks, and I think I ended up being born at like I was like 9 pounds 3 ounces or something, so I was a big baby. And after that, a couple years later, when she went to have my brother, she wanted to try to have a VBAC, and the doctor like completely dismissed her and was like, "No, you had a C-section before. We're just going to do another one." And you know, back in the day, she didn't really get the chance to like advocate for
I'm so
herself
sorry.
either.
Yeah.
And so she had that. And then by the time she had my sister, they were just like, you've had two C-sections. Let's just, you know, do a third one, call it a day, you know. And so, but because she had all three C-sections, they said, we recommend you getting your tubes tied because medically, like, it would be like detrimental for your body for you to go through another C-section after this. So she was kind of had her hands tied and was kind of forced into getting her tubes tied afterwards, which again, like
Goodness.
we have a lot more research and a lot more studies now on different things than they did back in the day. And so for my mom, she just like lives with that guilt of, she said that like for the longest time, she had this like thing of like, you know, would start feeding into these lies of, oh, you couldn't even give birth correctly. Like you couldn't even have your kids the proper way. And so it's so sad to see that, you know, in her case it was medically necessary, you know, and for so many women now that there's still this like thing that like you can be, you know, criticized for having a C-section. And so, or for whatever style of birth that you have, you know, and so it just really, it really breaks my heart with that. And that, you know, you're saying about having like to educate women on, you know, pregnancy and labor and delivery and things like that. I really strongly feel that even with, I mean, I have a master's degree in English. I like wrote papers, I've been in journals, I've done all these things. I feel like even with the amount of research that I've done for myself personally, there has been so much about pregnancy and delivery and kids and all these things that like I have felt so ignorant about. And I feel like it has been so missed on just doctors and nurses and just people in the medical field to even educate on certain things, And I'm like, I'm just baffled. And so part of it is even with this podcast too is just kind of this fire in me of like, I don't think that it's fair that women go into situations and they're not like informed or they're not told or they're not, even just the slight chance of like, hey, maybe you should try this instead of this, or maybe let's do this instead of that. Like one of the biggest things that I was completely like blown away with was how in prenatals they talk about folic acid versus folate,
Mm-hmm.
and even just the difference in that. Like there are some women who can't, like their body has like that genetic, there's like a genetic mutation or something that they can't.
Or, yeah, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and they like can't process the folic acid. And so I had a friend who she actually went and finally went to do testing and figured out that she had 4 miscarriages because of the folic acid, because her body could not digest it. And so even just in situations like that, and it's not this thing that the doctors are telling you, hey, why don't we test you first,
Mm-hmm.
see if you can process this, and then if not, we'll give you prenatals with folate instead of folic acid. And there's so many people who there's just like even the topic of conversation of that. Like I had a nurse reach out to me when I said that I was taking folate instead of folic acid, and she's like, oh, you can't do that. That's going to cause autism in your kids. That's going to cause a lack of brain development. Like I've seen it and all these things and blah, blah,
Does she
blah.
not remember
And I
that
was
folic
like,
acid, though, is literally synthetic?
that's what I'm saying. Like even that, I was like, I'm sure that this is what
They
you've been
make
taught. I'm
that
sure that they're,
because they have to
oh,
they make it because they're making money off of it. Like most if you look at the ingredients of anything, it's enriched foods are not good for you. They
mm-hmm,
take all the good stuff out and then they put fake stuff
yeah,
in because it sells. And so,
yeah.
so
And that's, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's like crazy. So like even just figuring out things like that, it just is so baffling to me, and just again, just the push for certain things, and it's like it's not in our best interest. It's just for what's making money or what we can do or this, that, and the other. And so yeah, I feel that it's just this whole thing about being able to like educate women and really just kind of like bring women together, because again, in this day and age with people just all over the place, it's like how can we do that? How can we still be
Yeah.
unified? How can we still be connected? And that's why I feel like this is one of the greatest uses of technology, is being able to connect
Yeah.
people. And so yeah, so I'm very excited for what you're doing and just seeing all that the Lord's doing in you. And I think even with growing up in the church, it's kind of like you see people who have like these crazy wild testimonies of coming to the Lord, and then for some of us it's like, well, I've grown up in the church. I didn't do this or that. I didn't, I wasn't in the world. I wasn't all this stuff. And so it's kind of like thinking back to that of, how is the Lord going to use me? And
Hmm.
I think it's so wild that he even prepares us, ahead of time, and is kind of like, hey, get ready,
Yeah.
and so I know that you probably never even thought that this was going to be, your journey and where,
No, not
things
at
led up
all.
to.
No. And I kind of touching back on some of the things you were sharing, a big part of what my desire, and if anybody takes anything away from this podcast, it's to understand what informed consent is. So, for example, if you're going to go into labor and they talk about, okay, we're going to give you some Pitocin now, and they're just telling you what they're doing. That's that should be you should not go into a hospital birth unless you have had education, um, because what happens is often what happens now. Sometimes pitocin works great for moms and they have no problem. But if anyone doesn't know what pitocin is, that's why I'm talking about it, because it's a really big one. It's synthetic. It's a synthetic hormone that's supposed to replicate and be identical to oxytocin, which is your God-given hormone that you get when you're happy and you're loved. And what happens with pitocin is your body molecularly is smart, understands that that's not real, and kind of panics a little bit, and it tweaks the signals inside of your body, and so it's more stressful, more aggressive, more difficult. And they're like, oh, it looks like your labor's progressing, and meanwhile you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, and it's way more intense, not the way it's supposed to be. A lot of women do not like it afterwards, and they wish that they knew what it was and what it would be about. Now that's just one example of like 40 million that I could talk about. But informed consent is super important. Also, inductions. That's super important to talk about because maybe you're 40 weeks, maybe you're 41 weeks, maybe you're 42 weeks. Doesn't mean that you have to go get induced. Just because you're a big baby or your ultrasound is picking up a big baby does not mean that you're going to be a big baby. And like, I'm just saying this because there's a stigma on big babies. There's nothing wrong with big babies. Have a 10, 11-pound baby. Your body, your women's hips are meant to open up to have babies. Now, if there is a true medical emergency, let's say the oxygen, so like you intuitively know something's wrong and you need medical help, absolutely. Do whatever you need to do. But most of the time, there's too many interventions in women and with birth. And so that's why being a doula for me is rewarding because I get to say like, hey, you have an option with Pitocin. Hey, just because they're saying you're going to have a big baby doesn't mean you're going to have a big baby because ultrasounds are not accurate. Like one of my past clients, they were saying, oh, you need to be induced right now. Your baby's going to be a 10-pound baby. The baby was 7 pounds, 7 pounds. They were way off by like 2.5 pounds. So, I mean, that's super common. It's not just my past client. It's ask a lot of women. The babies are not what they are. And so, and I also want to say, I don't believe most nurses and doctors are intending to give women birth trauma. They're doing what they have been told and what they've been taught to help women. So we really can't get mad at doctors and nurses who are saying, well, this is what's supposed to help. These are the benefits. They're looking to help us. But part of being a doula, my role is to speak up and say, oh, thanks so much. Sorry. Thanks so much for talking about Pitocin. Can you talk about the risks? Can you talk about the side effects? Can you talk about what will happen and what this will lead to if it doesn't work? What if we do nothing? You know, asking those questions and getting educated before you make those choices, because all of these interventions go into postpartum. It affects your body, how you heal mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Birth is so spiritual. Like, it is. It just is. And any culture, any religion, they'll tell you it's spiritual. And so it's why it's so important to know, like, what are you allowing in your body? What are you allowing in your ears and in your eyes? Like, are you letting yourself be filled with fear or with faith? And also, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place a little bit. But there's nothing wrong with fear in birth. I know I'm probably like one of the most like off the wall doulas, but I mean that in the greatest way, because you have that birth is exactly parallel to what you have to overcome in your life. So if you have had things going on in your life through your childhood and through your young adult life, and now you're pregnant, guess what? All those things are going to get worked on in your pregnancy. It's very easy to just follow the leader. Just do what your pastor says. Just do whatever they're suggesting, whatever they're recommending, because they have experience that you don't have. Well, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily good for you.
One of the biggest things that you were saying was even just about Pitocin in general is just wild, because for me, I feel like I tried to do everything. I did all of the Christian hypnobirthing, I did all the prenatal yoga, I did all the massages, I did all the stuff. I was listening to just the word and just, not being in fear and all these different things. And then, I went into labor at 34 weeks.
Yeah.
And I labored for over 35 hours. And just during that time, I went about 15 hours with nothing, no intervention, no nothing. And I did not dilate at all. My water had broke. I had been, for several hours, obviously, like just kind of waiting and seeing if I was going to progress. And I didn't. And then they tried to give me some pain medicine to try to just help manage the contractions a little bit. And that helped for a little bit. And then they were telling me, hey, we can't give you any more because this will cross over into the placenta. And then they're telling me, hey, we need to start giving you Pitocin. And I had told my husband from the beginning, I said, I don't want to do Pitocin. I don't want to epidural. I don't want to do these things. And then we got to the point to where it was just, a lot. And so one of the things that we did with the doctors when because I was working with a midwife and I was going to have a water birth at a birthing center. And obviously that all went out the window when I went into labor.
It's out
And
of your hands.
so then,
Yeah.
yeah, and so we were at the hospital, and at the hospital, the doctor then was saying, we need to put you on Pitocin. And so for us, I was like, okay, like we're getting to the point to where I feel like we need to. And I said, but I was telling my husband, I said, I don't want to just like go into it full force. And so we had them start me on a very like small dose and then start to like increase it as hours went by. And then it started to get to the point to where I just was in so much pain from everything that I was like, I was literally in the middle of having the conversation with my husband of like, he's like, what do you want to do? Like the next thing they're saying is an epidural. And in the middle of it, I got one of the worst contractions I had. And I was like, bring them in, like bring it in. Because like at this point I had no other option. And so then they did the epidural and they had to do it twice. Cause the first one they did
Oh
ended up with a
no.
blood clot in it. So they did
I'm
it the second
sorry.
time. And the second time they did it, it hit a nerve in my leg, in my back, and it shot my leg out. And they were like, don't move. And I was like, I didn't move. Like that
That
was
was
from you
you.
guys. And so, yeah, so it was nuts. But
Oh no.
even through all of that, like I was so disappointed. I felt like my body was failing me. I was like, all these different things, was worried about my son. And then, come to find out that during that time, I ended up getting 2 steroid shots that were going to help our son's lungs because they were worried about, him being so early that his lung development and everything. And, he was like in the birthing canal for a good while and he was like ready to go, but I just never dilated. And even with the epidural, I didn't dilate for hours, forever. And then when I finally got to the place to where I hit like 10 centimeters and, I've been in the hospital now for almost like 3 full days. Started pushing, but like I couldn't feel anything. I'm like, I don't, they're like push. I'm like, I don't know if I'm pushing. I literally
Yeah.
can't feel. All I know is that I'm in so much pain. I can't move my legs. I don't know what's going on.
So
And
the
so,
epidural didn't take your pain away.
no, because the nurse that we had, like, I try not to get angry about it, but she was very much like, she didn't know what day it was, genuinely. And she would say, oh, I'll be back in 10 minutes. And she'd be gone for 3 hours.
Sorry.
And then she'd come back and she'd be like, oh, we're getting the doctor. And then she'd come back in with another nurse. And then they're like looking or trying to search me, like, trying to, check the cervix, all the stuff. And then they're like, oh, the one nurse told her, she's like, oh, maybe you should go get the doctor. And then she's like, oh, you think so? And I was like, weren't you supposed to get the doctor like 3 hours ago? Like, what is going on? And so we were so frustrated and we had her for 2 shifts. Like she left and came back and we had her for a second shift. And I told Ryan, I was like, I'm not happy. And so
You can
when we
always
finally
request
got
something
another
else.
nurse,
Yeah.
well, we know that now, you know what I
See,
mean?
that's
Like
those are the these
it's
are the
stuff.
things that are so important to know because if you immediately knew you didn't like her, kick her out. I mean,
Yeah.
in the
And that,
least respectful way, she's not working with you,
yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah. So and so when the next nurse came in and she was like, "Do you guys need anything?" Ryan was literally like, "Hey, like this is not on you." He's like, "We're very frustrated with the last nurse." And he goes, "But I'm going to let you know like if you say you're going to be back in 10 minutes, we need you back in 10 minutes because they were supposed to give me the boost for the epidural and stuff every like hour or so and she stopped. So I started feeling all the contractions again, but I'm like completely numb. And then the doctor when he came in, he's like, "Oh, so you're having contractions and you're on the epidural?" He's like, "That sucks." And I was like, "Yeah, no crap, you
Well,
know." And he was not, yeah, he was not the greatest guy. So it was just it was not a fun
I
time.
don't
But
even know what to say.
yeah, so I was just like baffled. But so then when we finally when I went into active labor, I pushed for about an hour and 15 minutes, which felt like an eternity. And at the very end, the doctor just, when the baby's head was finally coming out, it was like his head and his like shoulders. And so then he like kind of pulled him out and like I tore from him like pulling the baby. I had a second-degree tear and then he started sewing me up and then they do the thing where they like just start like pushing on your stomach to push all your organs down and everything. And he said that he had to do it because I was bleeding so much that he was worried about there being blood clots, so he was trying to like push everything down. I kid you not, out of everything from the labor and
It's
delivery,
always
him pushing on
the
me,
fun.
that
Yeah.
was the That was literally the worst thing ever. Like, I screamed louder than I thought that I ever could. Like, I didn't even scream that loud during labor and delivery or during the
Wow.
contractions. Like, it wasn't even that bad. Like, him pushing on me was the absolute worst thing.
I'm gonna book a ticket and I'm gonna fly to your birthday.
Please, please, that would be amazing. So it was just wild. And then afterwards, come to find out later on, a few weeks later, I ended up having postpartum preeclampsia. And but I had no idea what it was. I just woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't breathe. And I was telling my husband, I was like, if I pass out, you need to call an ambulance. Because I just felt, I was like, I can't breathe. My arm went numb, my face went numb, my tongue went numb. And we literally just prayed. And it was literally by the grace of God that I'm like still alive. And that happened to me twice.
Wow.
And since then, I have started to still have like these episodes
Mhm.
of like I'll be sitting somewhere or my vision gets blurry and it gets fuzzy and then my arm goes numb and then my lip goes numb and like I've gone to the doctors like several times
Oh
and
my.
they're like, "Well, it's not stroke symptoms." They're like, "It's not this, it's not that." And I'm like, "Yeah, but then what is it?" And they're like, "We don't know." They like literally don't know.
So
So it's just crazy.
that's a if you can absolutely get a Medicaid doula, like I get one, or if you don't qualify for a Medicaid doula, look around your area for doulas who that you can hire, or there's if there are so many doulas out there who are looking to do like their first three births to get their certification, or there's local doulas who are trying to there's student midwives around who need to have observed births, or there's always somebody in the birth world looking for someone to support. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge advocate on that. In fact, I created a local birth work directory because there's nothing around here where anybody's put anything together to help connect women like you. Well, of course, for my area, but like women with
Mm-hmm.
stories like yours to find support because there's always a mom going through something. Always. Who can help her? Oh, your doctors are telling you all the same things. It's nothing when you know it's something. And oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I created this directory where okay, talk to this person because they specialize in this, this, and this, and they will help point you to the right direction to get the correct testing and to get the right diagnosis if you need that, so that you can be properly taken care of. And this is where advocacy is so important because you have to become your own advocate. And it sucks, but it's also wonderful because then you get to the bottom of what you're needing. And that's a big role in the doula world, and why I didn't have to make a directory, and I don't have like every single birth worker in Southwest Michigan, but I have I have about 100 people, including doulas, midwives, craniosacral therapists, physical therapists, pelvic floor therapists, people who specialize in tongue ties, all of those things because women like you, like me, we have something, some story, or we're pregnant again and we're like, what is this going to look like this time around because of my history, because of my story, what I'm feeling now and what I'm concerned about. Are they going to take care of me the way that I need to? And so I say that because I know like there are women like me out there who are just searching to help connect the dots for moms because this isn't just a job or like I just need to make some money. No, this is my ministry. This is what I'm called to. And there's women in my city that I want to help because we all have a gift and a calling. We all have something that we can contribute to the people of God. And so um, I say that as an encouragement for you and also to whoever may see this because there's always help. And I'm so confident in it. I'm so confident that there's somebody out there who will help bridge those gaps. So
No, I love that. I think it's definitely needed because again, it's like there are so many things that like can just derail like everything. And I think had I not been as strong in my faith as I am and, with a husband who prays and is led by the Lord as well, I genuinely think that I would have died from all of
yes,
that. And it terrifies me now because I didn't even process any of that. I was talking with a friend about it several months later, and she was like, "It sounds like you had postpartum preeclampsia." And I was like, "But the funny thing is while I was in the hospital for an entire week after I had my son, because he had jaundice and his levels were just super high, I was telling them like, hey, like my side hurts, like I feel like I can't breathe, like I feel all these things, and they're like, well, your oxygen levels are good. They're like, your blood pressure's high, but you just need to relax. And I'm like, okay, all right,
No.
you know? And so it's just like things like that. And I was telling a friend of mine that I'm like, why wouldn't they just check? I had no idea postpartum preeclampsia was a thing. But it's like if I'm telling you and one of the signs is like, it's hard to breathe, hard to sleep, like all these different things, the high blood pressure, all of that. I'm like, why wouldn't you just check?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just try to monitor? Why wouldn't you just, And so, and the nurses would come in, and I had several of the nurses being like, oh, yeah, we don't really have people stay this long in the postpartum ward. And I was like, you think I want to be here? Like, I want to be home with my baby. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Whatever we can do to get us out of here quick, like, that's what we want to do.
Right.
And so it's just things like that, and for this pregnancy, I'm trying not to base my past experience on this. And thankfully, like, we've been prayed for and have just had so many different like words of encouragement and different things that this pregnancy is not going to be like the last. This pregnancy is going to be different. And I'm really like fully believing in that. But there is still just this like fear of this stuff from last time. So in my head, I was like telling my husband, I was like, let's just already get ready for a hospital birth. Like, let's just be prepared. You know what I mean? And in my head, it's like just this thing of not fear based and not just giving up, but it's almost like I'm not going to be naive to the things that I didn't know last
Yeah.
time. Now I feel a little more prepared of if I were in a similar situation, and I'm praying that like I can go into labor on my own and that I can be, doing the things on my own and I can dilate on my own without having to have any interventions. But just in case if I don't, now we know from the past experience of what to look for, what to be against, what to not, do and stuff in these situations. And so it's just been really a really interesting time to just kind of process all of that. And obviously, we're still a ways away, and we haven't met with the new doctor that we started setting up appointments with. But I'm curious to see how this is going to go, and we've already been prayerful about it. But I'm just very, I don't know, I'm very frustrated with the way things are
Yeah.
done and the way that people get treated. And the craziest thing is that my story is not the worst story that I've heard from this hospital that I had my son at, and that's the hospital that we're planning on going back to. And I'm praying that this time around, we're going to have a different experience and we're going to have different nurses. And and this time around we know that if a nurse is not treating us properly, we're going to ask for a different one, and I'm not going to be afraid to do that. And so and then even in that, like I had to educate my husband on a lot of stuff too, because I was telling him like, hey, if I'm unconscious or if I'm out of it and they try to say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, I'm like, you need to tell them no. You need to say, hey, we're not going to do that, my wife doesn't want that, or we're not going to do this, we're going to do this. And so being able to even have him kind of step up to bat, and come to bat for me was a complete miracle in itself, because I mean, I before and in other relationships and things like that, I had to be the one to advocate for myself for everything. Like I was always defending myself, I was this, I was that. And so now like being married to a person who is you know not only prayerfully like praying over me and our children and everything, but also being the type of man who is like, hey, I'm going to defend my wife, I'm going to defend her, I'm going to go to bat for her, is like a miracle in itself. And it's something even that I just never even thought that I like deserved. And so it's a crazy thing, but even just everything in the way that it happened was not what I thought, not what I wanted. But I know that the Lord was there through it all. And so thankfully, like my son, he was born at 6 pounds. You could not even tell. Everybody, like we tell him, we're like, oh, he's a preemie. They're like, oh my gosh, he looks like he's 3. And I'm like, yeah, that's thanks to his 6'2" dad. And so we joke about those things and stuff. But yeah, it just makes me really sad when I see certain people going through different things. And I am very grateful, and I've talked about it before, about having such a strong church community. And I live next door to my parents now. My sister lives down the street from me too. So we're very, very supported with our family and with our kids and stuff. But it it really makes me sad that there are other women who have had worse experiences and then they have to do things postpartum and in the fourth trimester on their own. And so it's just a wild time. And that's why I think too with what you do as a doula, and we were talking about this before we started recording, that that there are, you know, doulas and that birth doulas can come and that they can even come and just spend time with you postpartum. And I'm like, that's even something that I didn't even know about. And so I feel like there are even so many things about doulas that is not that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah. Um, and like I was saying, I don't know if it was, sorry, I forgot the timeline, if it was before recording or after, but a lot of states have the Medicaid program and it includes 12 visits. So that
Mm-hmm.
means you get to decide if you want to do all your prenatals for 12 visits or you can use them postpartum, which would be awesome because maybe you just need some laundry folded or you need a meal reheated and someone to come sit and help you hold the baby for a few minutes so you can go take a shower and take and this isn't just for first time moms. This is for moms who have maybe 5 or 6 kids or who have more kids and just need they're needing help. And also doulas are not we're not mandated reporters, but there's a lot that we see, a lot. And so if there's ever something that's unsafe, like with a situation, like we can encourage you to find the resources you need. But also, if you're showing signs of eclampsia, which is what sounds like you had, so preeclampsia is before you have the baby, and then eclampsia is after you have the baby. And it sounds like if I were your doula and I'd be like, you need to go to the hospital right now if your blood pressure and you're starting to lose feeling in certain parts of your body. That is a serious thing to pay attention to. And all the way from laundry to to noticing signs postpartum, that's what we're educated and trained in. And if there's anything, like in life as women, like we dream about our weddings and we dream about our family and having babies. You save for your wedding. Most people save for their wedding, or you do a bunch of research with which stroller you're going to get, and you spend $600 on a stroller. Do the same with a doula. Do the same with your birth team. Find somebody who, whether it's a doula or not, somebody who knows all of these interventions, knows you, the person, and can say, okay, she has a history of this going on. You're not listening to her. We're gonna keep speaking up, and we're gonna get a different nurse in now. Thank you. Oh, you're a midwife or you're a doctor, and you're dismissing my client and not listening to her. She would like to get and I can't speak for you, but I say, oh, it sounds like you wanted to get a new doctor. Is that right? And then you say, yeah, I want a new doctor. And then boom, new doctor, just like that. And it takes the pressure off of the husband because then the husband can focus on you, which is the most important because guess what? Natural oxytocin happens when you feel that security and protection from your spouse or your partner or whoever, like you feel that security, you're going to have a better birth environment. You're going to have a better birth outcome because you have that team set up in such a way where you can like you can relax. Your jaws relaxed, your shoulders are relaxed, and then suddenly, oh wow, I'm relaxed. I'm having very good successful contractions. It's like that's what having a doula is all about. um, so yeah. Anyway, birth team is super important, and who you have at your birth is super important. But kind of going back to like if we save for our weddings and we save for those strollers, we should be saving for a doula, or if you want to have a home birth, save for that too. There's lots of home birth midwives all over. And if you don't want a home birth and you want a hospital birth, absolutely, that's fine. You can still have a doula.
Yeah, so we're gonna kind of jump into a little segment we have called Real Talk. I'm not sure if you were able to watch the reel that I sent over. So the reel for that, it kind of talks more about breastfeeding and like the different demands. And
Yeah.
for viewers at home, as usual, I'll play the video for the viewers. As I was going over this video, it made me wonder what have been, because the video itself talks about some of the things that like are not talked about in a sense of like breastfeeding and stuff, and kind of more so like postpartum and everything. But it's like this thing of like, yeah, planning your life in 2 to 3 hour increments, understanding that you're just always going to have to be sharing your body with somebody else even after having your baby. You're still going to have to show up to breastfeed even if you're exhausted and tired. And I just wanted to ask you, like, with that, what are some of the other things that you think that they kind of, they obviously touched on some of those things, but what are some of the other things that you've seen that are kind of not talked about when it comes to like breastfeeding and postpartum?
I it's so there's a lot of layers to this, but you were saying earlier that now your family lives down the road from you, which is super super important postpartum when you have a baby. Because if you just get to a point where you're like, I feel like I'm gonna cry if somebody says something to me. It doesn't matter what they say. I'm just gonna cry. You you feel comfortable enough to say, Mom, can you just come over and like get me a Starbucks, or can you come over here and just talk to me, or can you come help me? You can have somebody you can reach out to, which is super super important. But there's some people out there who are going into this postpartum having a baby, and then maybe they're new to a city, like maybe you're a military mom, or your husband just got a job, and great job, but now you're 4 hours away from your family, or you're across the United States, not close anymore. You have to be, what isn't talked about is you have to figure out like who's going to be your support team, and how can you, if you don't have a support team, hire a postpartum doula, because they'll come in and check on you and make sure that you're sane, so to speak, because it's hard. It's and the only hard part is because it's just you haven't done this before, and you just need community. You need somebody who's going to say, "Hey, it's me again. I have a meal for you. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so hungry. I haven't eaten since last time you were here." Because guess what? That's a reality. A lot of moms just snack. They don't eat real meals. That's a problem. You can't heal if you're not nourished. If you're living in a cold environment and you don't have heat, like there's all these things, all these layers to consider, and it's not talked about enough to have the support you need. This is real. This is real talk. So
No, I love it. I love it. No, and this is how it is for, the nursing mother's room. It's like you got kids running around, you got stuff
mhm.
happening. We love it.
And
We support all
this
of
is a
it.
really good example too. If you have a toddler and you're pregnant, like it's going to be different. It is an adjustment to go from one to two, because your little one's going and reaching under the sink for you know whatever's under your sink, and you have another little one who's hungry and you have to nurse them or feed them or whatever, and you got this going on. This is real talk.
No, I love it. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm like thinking about for postpartum. But I've been seeing a lot of people who they're like, it's so much easier with a toddler and a newborn than it is like being pregnant and chasing a toddler around. And I'm like, I'm praying that that's the case because this pregnancy has just been so exhausting like already. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm praying that it'll be easier because again, like I can deal with the crying baby and dealing with my son and doing different things. I'm just like, I just want to like feel at least like I can breathe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. But no, but I love that. I think it's crazy. I was even thinking back. I saw a video of this mom who, I think she married somebody or was working or something, but she's married to a Japanese man, and they're living in Japan, and she's pregnant with their first child or something, and she was talking about how literally like they send them like a check for like at the beginning when they find out she's pregnant, they send them a check that's going to cover all of her medical costs, that's going to cover her like through postpartum, and then they have like these basically like doulas that come in, they clean her house, they come take care of her, they make her food, and they have like their strict like policy of like she's not to leave the house for like 40 days and stuff like that. So it's like, how do you function like that? They come and help, they have night nurses, they have people to take over the night feedings, things like that, and it's just all like included. And then when she was talking about the actual cost, like translated to like US dollars, I think it's like $800 for everything from prenatal to postpartum to like in the first couple months of people coming and helping and taking care, and like obviously like the family comes and helps with all of that too. But I just think like we're just so lost in the States, and there's so many things that I'm just like, man, this would be so much easier. Like even just, for women who have to work, and just being able to get like maternity leave. Like I've seen so many videos of moms just like crying as they're driving on the way to work, and she's like, I had to put my 8-week old in daycare and there's nothing else I could do because I don't have any other options. And I just think like it's just so sad to see. And I just think that our systems in general have just failed us. Like all of it has failed. And, it's like, it just seems hopeless at times, but it's also like, conversations like this and advocating for ourselves and doing different things that I think are really going to start, invoking change and, forcing people to make different policies and different things. And I think it only is going to get stronger the more that we shed light on certain situations and topics of conversation. And but yeah, it's just really sad, like when I hear or see that people don't have like the support system. And I think, I think every day like I'm blessed to have my family so close. Like not everybody even has that, or even has like a good relationship with their family to even want to be close to them, you know what I mean? So it's really just crazy how like there's so many expectations put on moms. Like even in, for some, they're expected to work full time, take care of the house, take care of the kids, take care of their husband, do all these different things. And we wonder why mental health is, taking such a plummet, or we wonder why women are going through so much postpartum. And, there's always something happening behind the scenes. And I talked about this in a different video or different podcast that I did, where there was a mom who she was a part, I don't know if her husband was a pastor or whatnot, but they had 5 kids and she just had a newborn, and she took her own life. And the husband was talking to another guy, on the podcast, and they're talking about, how loved she was and all these things. And he's talking about his experience with it and how frustrating it is. And I had made a comment about it that I was like, I wonder what was going on behind the scenes. I wonder what she was going through. And the podcaster messaged me and was basically like, you need to listen to the whole podcast before you make that assumption. She was really loved, had a good community, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, but there obviously was something going on for her to take her own life. There obviously was something that was still going on for this mother. And again, I'm not judging, I'm not saying she didn't have motherly instincts, but like as a mom, I would do literally anything for my son. So to come to the conclusion that she needed to leave her babies behind, that it was better for her to not be there than to be there for her babies, or to be with her husband, or in the situations that she was in, whether it was, trauma from her childhood or different things, all of that stuff comes up during postpartum. Like you're saying, you have to start dealing with these things that like you've been through, because it does come up. That I was saying there literally had to still be something else going on that she was either carrying by herself or didn't feel like she had anybody to talk to or carry the weight with her, because she took her own life. So I'm like, whether she had a good support system, good people in her life or not, that wasn't the case. I wasn't denying any of that. I wasn't saying her husband was a bad person, or anything like that. But there was obviously still something that was going on for her to make that decision, because I don't believe that it was an easy decision, or that it didn't take a lot of thought for her to do that, and um so yeah, I just stuff like that, like her story like really affected me. And it just really makes me think, and really start to like advocate again for moms postpartum, and to really just try to be there for people. And just even, just a simple thing of reaching out and sending somebody a text, like I'm like, there's so many people that like from back home in California that I've known for 20 plus years did not reach out to me, did not say a single thing. And it's not this thing like, oh, I need you to talk to me, I need you to whatever, but it's like some people have tried to act like they're so entitled to certain things, or to certain, even just a relationship with my son, or just, this, that, or the other. And I'm like, you did not even send me a text, and not even say like, hey, how are you doing? Like not even a single thing. And it's again, it's just like, how did we get so far removed to where we can't we can't even be like decent humans. You know what I mean? And it just is baffling to me. So it's again, I'm like, I know that there are people who, people here in Texas that I've known for a few months or a couple years or whatever the case, and that have done so much for me and my family
Hmm.
that I could never even imagine. And literally like bringing me meals, dropping stuff off at our door, and just like, hey, praying for you. Hey, love you. If you need anything, reach out. And that like actually mean it.
Yeah.
And I like see that, and I'm just so grateful and so thankful, and I will never forget that, and so I just it just baffles me when like people even in like extended family that like don't reach out, don't anything. And I'm like, I see you're online, I see you're doing stuff. It takes 2 seconds to just kind of reach out, and so I don't know. So that was a whole long tangent for that and stuff too. But I just,
Well,
yeah,
that's
I
important though.
think,
That's part of real talk. That's part of being raw because I think we need to be a little bit more raw and talk about these things because wouldn't it be nice if all you just got was a text and say like, "Hey, I know we live really far away from each other now, but I'm gonna Venmo you $10 to go get a cake pop and a little coffee. So when you can't get your little one to sleep, you can just go for a drive, get her to sleep, and enjoy something. Hugs, or something. Because like, I would do that. Send me. My Venmo is like send me something like makes me makes me want to include you more and it opens the conversation up. And if you want to feel entitled into somebody's life, maybe do some maybe be empathetic and be warm again. And you know it's not about the food or the money, it's about supporting. So, in what practical, physical ways can you support? Like your community is dropping off meals, and I mean, it's obviously meant something to you because here you are talking about it, and those people are closer to you now than like maybe those other friends or family that they're family and they're friends, but they're not really in your circle anymore because they're not making like if it's just how relationships work too. Like you can't expect anything out of a relationship if you're not willing to give anything. It goes both ways. And when someone's
yeah,
vulnerable
literally.
in a relationship or someone's going through something very difficult, and just like a general common sense situation, if someone's going through a loss or going through just they lost their job or something, they have a breakup or something, and they're very low, what does the other friend do? They're like, hey, let's go watch a movie for a few hours and take our mind off of it and have our favorite snack or something. And it's like that's
Hmm.
community. That's stepping in and being the village. And we can still do that with moms. It's just there's this funny thing that happens when a mom is pregnant and then suddenly she has a baby. She does that. What is that? Where suddenly the people that you have been close to all your life are suddenly the furthest away and you miss them. You miss your friends, you miss your family, and nobody knows how to bridge these gaps. And that's a conversation worth having because we need community. Women need each other, moms need each other, and it's kind of a maternal, I would say, responsibility for mothers to take care of each other. And that's why often churches are really good at this because there's in a lot of churches across America, there's a sweet old lady that puts meals together for moms, and that's why being part of a church can be such a huge blessing to moms.
Hmm.
Now, not everybody is, but that's why being part of some kind of community is a really big benefit because you don't have to go through life alone. Um,
Yeah.
and
No.
again, like you obviously hit the jackpot if you have people who have loved you and expected nothing in return. That makes it so that now
Yeah.
you can say thank you so much and continue to foster that relationship and
Yeah.
be
No,
community.
definitely. Yeah, literally. No, I love that. Well, I am so thankful that we were able to sit and chat, and I can definitely see us continuing this conversation in the
Yeah.
future. And I am so grateful. And I think we'll definitely put some of the links to your resources in this podcast just because I think it's important. And, I think just being educated and continuing the conversations, I think is just so needed in this day and age and for moms in general. So I'm very grateful for having you and thank you for joining us today in the Nursing Mothers
Well,
Room.
thank you. Thank you for having me.